One night, a man named Ted went to the bathroom to urinate after making love to his wife. When he heard what sounded like pebbles falling into the toilet, he looked down and was amazed to see what looked like a red skittle drop out from his pee hole and into the toilet. He then pulled it out of the toilet bowl and put it in his mouth. Sure enough, it was a skittle. He was delighted by this new skill and ran back into the bedroom to tell his wife about it and show her the rainbow of colors that he could produce.
"Taste the rainbow!"
he exclaimed as a stream of Skittles pelted her in the face. Ted's wife was initially shocked and grossed out. She gagged out most of what made it into her mouth, but she soon realized the Skittles were actually quite delicious.
"How'd you do that?"
she questioned. Ted jumped up on the bed and exclaimed,
"It's a miracle!"
Ted flung another rainbow load into the air and caught a few in his mouth as they bounced off the ceiling. He then took his wife by the hand, and they both started jumping on the bed because of the sugar high. The next day, Ted awoke in a wonderful mood. He couldn't wait to get into the office and brag about his new ability.
"It's Friday, so Bob's gonna brag about his stupid boat all day,"
Ted smugly thought to himself.
"I bet his boat can't do this."
All of Ted's muscles tensed as he performed a furious downstroke that caused an arc of Skittles to shoot straight into his mouth. Bob was Ted's co-worker, and he had bought himself a new boat about a month earlier, and every Friday would brag about his weekend boating plans. Ted was sick of hearing about it, and intent on one-upping Bob with his new skill. He got dressed and filled his mug with coffee. He kissed his wife and told her to have a nice day.
"Wait, aren't you gonna have breakfast?"
asked his wife.
"No, I'm not really hungry." "Okay, well have a good day,"
his wife said disappointedly. When Ted walked into the office, he walked with a spring in his step. Today he was going to wipe that smug smile off of Bob's fat face, and he was going to do it in front of everyone at today's meeting. He saw Bob and another co-worker at the water cooler and walked towards them. He overheard Bob talking.
"It's because broads love boats. Thank God it's Friday. I'm gonna spend the weekend betting some hot broads."
Ted grabbed a paper cup and filled it.
"How's it going, Ted?"
asked Bob.
"I was just telling Ken I'm gonna take my boat out to Skank Lake and sink my snake." "It's going good. I'm looking forward to the meeting today." "Meetings are boring. When are you gonna get a boat, Ted?" "Bob, I got something better than your boat."
Ted downed his water and aggressively wiped his face with his coat sleeve. It was later in the afternoon and the weekly meeting had begun. Ted's boss went over various numbers and statistics, and then it was time for everyone at the meeting to talk about their individual projects.
"What do you have for me today, Ken?"
asked Ted's boss.
"Last Friday after work, I bought a BMW. Then in the evenings, I would go out and cruise for hot broads. 5 out of the last 7 days, I was able to bet a hot broad. On one of the other 2 days, I got a number, and on the other one, I got head."
Ken reported.
"You're not gunning for my job, are you?"
said Ted's boss, causing everyone in the meeting to chuckle.
"Good work, Ken. Now on to Arnold."
Arnold had a motorcycle, and he was doing only okay because he had bought a Japanese racing bike instead of a hog. Then it was on to James, who had found great success with hot broads after he had purchased a hang glider. Evan was the new young upstart who impressed everyone at the meeting with his technique of plying hot broads with cocaine and Walmart jewelry. Then it was Bob's turn.
"How's your boat going, Bob?"
asked the boss.
"Well, it seems that I've hit a plateau with my boat. I'm boating about 3 hot broads a weekend. I'm thinking that if I change the name of my boat, I might be able to up my average." The meeting room then erupted into various proposals to rename Bob's boat.
Blowboat was popular at first, but Suckin' Ship won out in the end.
"So, Ted, you got anything new for us?"
said Ted's boss, who put on a cocky smile and grin as he looked around the room while everyone chuckled.
"Please don't tell us it was sex with your wife again."
The meeting room then erupted in laughter. Ted stood up as tall as he could and addressed the meeting room.
"No, but let me assure you, I have plenty of sex with my wife."
Bob jeered at Ted and gave a thumbs down.
"I discovered that I have a talent. I can squeeze Skittles out from my peel."
Everyone at the meeting room looked baffled. Ken looked downright disgusted. Then Evan spoke up.
"So you shove Skittles in your wiener and squeeze them out? How does that score you hot broads?"
"No, they come out of nowhere. It's like magic,"
said Ted. Then Bob blurted out,
"Magic chicks? Only teenage boys like stupid magic chicks." "Shut up! It's real magic! You're the only trick here, Bob!"
retorted Ted.
It better be,
Said the boss in a stern voice.
We don't do teenage boys here at Nintendo.
Bob then pointed at Ted.
You're making it up.
Bob looked to their boss.
He probably just spent the whole weekend marrying his wife over and over again just to get laid.
Ted was becoming enraged.
Bob, you bastard! Approve it!
And with that, Ted jumped up onto the meeting table and dropped his pants down to his ankles. He hunched forward like an Olympic skier and then violently thrusted his hips forward as his floppy wiener made its way to slap him in the stomach. A beautiful rainbow cascade of Skittles were flung out into the air. Everyone at the meeting was amazed by the sight. Ken's jaw dropped and a few Skittles fell into his mouth. Ted began thrusting his hips back and forth, shooting Skittles all over the meeting room. There were Skittles everywhere.
You believe me now, Bob?
Asked Ted as he glared at Bob. Bob crossed his arms and responded.
No, it's just a chick. It's just magnets and strings.
Now Ted was truly irate. He dropped to his knees and swept up a handful of Skittles off the table.
Taste the rainbow, bitch!
He yelled as he lunged at Bob. Ted landed on Bob, slapping him in the mouth with a handful of Skittles. Bob and Ted both fell to the floor, and Ted scooped up another handful of Skittles, shoving them into Bob's mouth.
Stop, Ted!
Pleaded Bob, but Ted just shoved another handful of Skittles into Bob's mouth.
Ted!
Sobbed Bob.
Ted, please stop! I'm diabetic!
The boss had made his way over to break up the fight and was now standing over them.
Get off of him, Ted! You fucking monster! Are you okay, Bob?
Bob was coughing up Skittles. There were tears running down his cheeks and rainbow-colored stains all around his mouth. Ted's boss pulled out his cell phone and made a call.
Kathy, I need you to send security up here. I need to have Ted escorted back to his desk so he can get his things. He's fired.
Ted wasn't as upset as he probably should have been.
I'll show them.
He thought to himself as he drove home. It was almost unreal. He was heading home only an hour earlier than usual, but the lack of traffic was uncanny. At a red light, Ted spoke to himself.
I don't need that job anymore, for I have tasted the rainbow and its fruity flavors. I have come.
The light turned green, and he aggressively dug into his accelerator. His front wheels chirped as the raw power of his Toyota Corolla's 4 cylinders rocketed him to 45 miles per hour in just over a minute. He was now speeding in a 35 zone, but he didn't care. Ted sat down on the couch and took off his shoes when he got home. His wife sat down beside him. She asked him how his day went, and he told her about getting fired and how smug Bob had been, while leaving out the parts about the Skittles and pulling his wiener out. She seemed a bit upset, but Ted reassured her that he was only fired due to the boss's lack of foresight and that he would soon find a company that would appreciate his talents. The next morning, Ted and his wife were at the grocery store. Ted left his wife at the produce section as he walked off to grab a box of Cookie Crisp breakfast cereal. On his way back, he ran into Bob, who had a cart with a 24-pack of White Claws, several bottles of MD 2020, and a case of O'Doul's.
Hey, Ted,
Said Bob sympathetically.
I'm sorry about you getting sacked. I told the boss that you couldn't have known I was diabetic, but he wouldn't listen.
It's whatever. Are you heading out on your boat?
Asked Ted, glancing in the shopping cart.
Yeah, party on the sucking ship. Want to come out? Bring your wife?
We can make it.
Ted responded.
We depart around noon. See you then.
Bob turned to walk away, and then Ted tippy-toed up to Bob as close as he could. He then took out his wiener and slid it into Bob's back pocket. He filled Bob's back pocket with Skittles. Ted zipped up as he stealthily slid away down the dog food aisle. Ted then made his way to an employee and told her that Bob was shoplifting Skittles. After that, Ted found his wife, and they finished their shopping. As they made their way out of the grocery store, they saw a beaten and bloodied Bob in handcuffs sitting on the ground, and a police officer was holding up an evidence bag full of Skittles.
Is that Bob from your work?
Asked Ted's wife. It's a worthless thief, answered Ted with a look of pride on his face. That night, Ted made passionate love to his wife. He even had the courage to try out some new dirty things on her unsuspecting holes. He kept her up all night, and the bed was covered in Skittles. It was now Sunday, and as usual, they were attending church. Ted's wife was exhausted and fell asleep a quarter way through the sermon. The sermon was nice and about appreciating the miracles big and small that come into our lives. When the preacher was finished, he asked the congregation if they would like to share any of the miracles that have happened to them in their lives. Ted then raised his hand and said,
I would like to share a miracle that I have been recently granted.
Ted had all of the parishioners' eyes on him.
I can squeeze Skittles out from my pee hole, like a lot of Skittles, and I have no idea where they're coming from, so it has to be a miracle.
This was followed by at least 30 seconds of absolute silence. Everyone in the congregation was shocked. Finally, the preacher broke the silence. That's nice, Ted. Anyone else? An old lady sat up and started talking about how she thinks her dog is trying to say, I love you, but since it was an Akita, it kept saying, I rough you. Ted sat down. Inside, he was furious. The pastor had just disregarded his miracle as if Ted was a troubled child. When it was time to recite prayers, Ted came up with a plan. Everyone was kneeling in the pews. Ted looked around. No one was watching, and his wife was still asleep, so he unzipped his pants and put his wiener between both of his hands. He did this so that if anyone saw him, they would just think that he was praying really hard. He then started meticulously squeezing Skittles out from his pee hole, trying not to let any of them fall onto the ground and make a noise. Before the prayer was over, he had filled his coat pocket. Then, when the collection plate came around, he dropped in the pocket full of his Wiener Skittles. There was some murmuring and confused looks as the collection plate made its way up to the front. The priest looked at it puzzled.
Skittles?
The priest asked. Ted stood up.
Yes, those are my Skittles from my wiener.
Ted walked up past the pews to just in front of the altar. He turned around to face the congregation.
I'm tired of not a single person believing me. I should be made a saint. I stand here to prove this miracle before you all.
And with that, Ted awkwardly shimmied his pants down and pulled his wiener out over his belt. The entire congregation gasped in unison. He then began tugging on his wiener. With every stroke, 4, sometimes 5 Skittles would fall out onto the floor. Ted grunted as he squeezed and tugged, producing a rainbow of colors and fruit flavors. The hall was silent. People were looking away, disgusted. Some people shielded the eyes of their children. But then the silence was broken by wind. The wind of Ted's very own wife. Ted's wife gave out a very long fart that was so loud that she woke with a fright. Her sleepy eyes came into focus and she saw her husband standing in front of the church with his wiener out. The church was also now filled with the smell of Skittles from her fart.
Someone kick them out. This is disgusting,
said a man as several people vomited.
Sodomy,
exclaimed a now irate pastor.
You butt-did your wife and filled her butt with Skittles. And now my entire church smells like Skittles. This is an abomination before the Lord. You have desecrated God's house. You are no longer welcome here. And if you don't leave now, I will call the cops.
Ted's wife got up crying, with her hand covering her face in embarrassment. Ted caught up to her and put his hand on her shoulder, but she rejected it and made one of those crying noises people make when they're already crying, but then something happens that makes them cry harder for a moment. She made it into the car and plopped herself down in the passenger seat. With her head turned and both of her hands covering her face, Ted sat down in the driver's seat and said,
Look, I'm sorry.
Just take me home.
She interrupted as her crying intensified. She cried the whole way home without a word. They arrived at their house. They walked inside and Ted shut the door behind them.
I'm sorry. I didn't think they would overreact like that. Some church, that is. They can't even appreciate the miraculous when it's whipped out right in front of them,
said Ted.
I'm so embarrassed. I'm mortified,
cried Ted's wife.
You and your stupid Skittles have ruined my life and our marriage.
Ted pleaded with his wife.
Don't say that. Don't say that about our Skittles.
Just then the doorbell rang and Ted opened the door. It was a police officer.
What's this about?
Asked Ted.
We have surveillance video of you putting your wiener into an individual's pocket,
said the police officer. Ted's wife began wailing.
Is this true? Are you cheating on me?
No, it's not like that.
Ted responded.
It was just that one time.
The police officer then crossed the threshold into the house and spoke to Ted in an authoritative voice.
Put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for the sexual assault of Bob's pocket.
No!
Said Ted.
It was the Skittles! I could make Skittles come out of my pee hole!
That's the stupidest thing I have ever heard,
said the police officer.
Put your hands behind your back.
I'll prove it!
Said Ted frantically as he started to fiddle with his belt.
Put your hands in the air now,
said the cop as he unholstered his firearm.
Just wait! I have something I want to show you!
Said Ted loudly with his voice breaking. The cop took a step back, drawing his weapon on Ted.
Put your hands up now!
Then, just as Ted's hand finally made its way under his belt and into his pants, the cop unloaded an entire clip into Ted's body. Ted died there on the floor, right in front of his wife. But that's not the end of her story, for there is a bit more to this mystery. You see, the Skittles coming out from his pee hole were no holy miracle or mystic magic, but in fact was an artifice of science. For just a quarter mile away upon a wooded hill, just outside of Ted's neighborhood, was hidden a vessel, a ship from outer space. And just outside that vessel, under its eerie and unearthly glowing lights, were two spacemen that were also robots. They traveled a vast, unfathomable distance to test humanity.
Cracks in this. These humans have proved themselves to be a barbaric and uncivilized lot.
Said one spaceman to the other. After a pause, he continued.
You change one thing about a member of their community, give them a gift, then that community turns on them, treats them like a monster, just because they are different. Such a shame. This planet could benefit so much from our utopia machine, but alas, they cannot be trusted with such a powerful device because they might turn it into an instrument of war and oppression.
The other spaceman then spoke.
Claxworth, you're full of shit. You're just being lazy again.
Claxworth then rebutted defensively.
Then you do it. The Utopia equipment is tedious to set up and wicked heavy.
And with that, both spacemen walked back up into their majestic craft. The spaceship then shot up into the sky to journey through space and time, for they were on a mission to find species worthy of their unfathomably advanced technologies.